and welcome. This is Kevin, also known as AWOL. And today we're going to use that graph paper template that we created last week. As you can see, I've already made a mark where the center is, and I'm already jumping right on it, right? Um, yes, I know I always start with red. It's just my thing. What I want to do here is I want to show you how I take the graph paper and make a pattern that isn't just a repetitive thing that just happens, over and over and over. I make a pattern that is the entire bracelet. So by starting in the center, I'm able to make it so that way now it's going to be symmetrical from end to end. And that's where this template comes in, is it's about finding out how many knots or how long is my bracelet that is of a nice size. It fits around my wrist nicely. It's something like that, right? Find that size first based off of just something you've already made. You already, if you have other things you've done, you can do this, right? So then you make that one, and then you start being creative. Like now, this one, it took me about 20 minutes to fill this all in. The speed is actually sped up. This is like a ×2 speed. But I had the idea. I was in bed, I was laying there, and I thought, oh, well, wouldn't it be cool if you start out with a big diamond in the center and then make the diamonds get progressively smaller as they head out towards the ends where like the loop or the tails are. So that's what we have here. And you can kind of see I'm kind of running ahead, and I'm putting in how I think that next diamond should be. Now I figured out that it's an even number, and that makes that little 4 square thing in the center when it's an even number. I could have made it like 6, 5, 4, 3, but I went with 6, 4, 2. And that's, you can see that kind of makes for an interesting thing. Now, you can see I'm filling in these little squares. What those are where the string is traveling underneath the knots, what you normally don't see. So you can tell when it's a right left because of the way that it makes those corners, or if it's just going to the left or just going to the right. This is all sorted out right there by showing you where the string goes. No need for arrows. That just kind of hinders you from the experience of being able to change up, because if you just leave the one string on top the whole time, I can tell you that, yeah, like that green right there, that would run out before you hit the end. So the fact that there is another one that you can kind of change up with halfway through will make it so that way you don't have to cut your strings extra long. By putting in the path, see now I'm putting in this red, right? I'm just going to put that in quick, but then I'm going to put in the path that the string follows shortly thereafter. And the whole reason for that is if you put those bits in, because they're relatively simple, because it's you can know for sure where that goes, it will make it easier when it comes to the ones like that are more on the inside where you're not sure how that's going to work or how that goes. So that's kind of important to being able to see. If you do the easy part first, the harder part will come very naturally. I think that's the easiest way of putting it, right? So, and you can see here, I know that I want the yellow to be on the outside. I know I'm creating a fade of 4 colors. And that's sort of cool, I think. The ability to know, if you like kind of know in advance what you're targeting to do, being able to set it up and doing it, right? So, and part of this is just my experience. That's why I was able to kind of go ahead there, put those in. I know that I can make those colors land where it is. Also, you may notice that I've made this as easy as possible. Very few, like just that red, hit the outer edge and bounce back in. Most of them hit the edge and just kind of, it would continue. But there's certain corners that I had to do it in order to be able to keep that little 4 square thing like you have right here where the green is. So if I seem really excited about this, it's just, I am. I really am very excited about this. This is something that I really want to teach. I know that, oh, take a look at this real quick. I changed where the red comes in because it's just going to make it that much easier down the road when I start off the bracelet, and it could get really messed up there if I didn't. So I changed that. I'm really excited about teaching this because I know that a lot of people like to use a pattern to be able to make their bracelet. I want to be able to encourage not only making your own, but making your own where it's not repeating the pattern all the time. Like I've got this one here, right? This is, I don't know if you can see that. It's fun. It repeats. It's whatever. Um, and so, yeah, it doesn't repeat completely because the ends are different. And as a result, this might not actually be something that's on one of the other websites showing you how to make a bracelet. And that's okay, I think. I mean, maybe at some point, like even this bracelet I just did, maybe somebody's going to try to put it in there. I know from my own experience back, gosh, a long time ago, I personally tried to put in one of my own patterns into one of those websites, and it didn't turn out because the machine kind of rejected it because it didn't repeat. So it is what it is. I ended up I still made the pattern. I made a lot of it. In fact, I think I have a couple laying around. That one. So, um, yes, there's 10,000 different bracelets out there or more on those websites, and you can try to make every single one of them if that's your heart's desire. Um, but I think there's something to be said for when you create your own, um, or you make it so that way that the pattern is something that is not just a bunch of sums of little parts, 10, 15 rows that just repeat. This pattern that we're working on here, it doesn't repeat at all. It goes right to the middle and then goes backwards the other way. Oh, another cool thing I want to mention. You can see I kind of messed up one of those green squares there. That is unfortunate, and I will fix it later on. Oh, here I go. Um, I had to copy the other square because it ended up blocking out the whole thing. This is because it didn't fill up the whole computer screen. All of the black didn't turn green because I accidentally hit the line. And that's because the new graph paper that I'm using over on my website, we made it now so that way that no longer happens. And some of the bigger, more intense patterns where you have like a lot of strings, if you hit that line, it could really bog down a computer and potentially almost even make it crash. And I didn't want that for any of you guys. It was certainly frustrating for me because, I would be clicking along and suddenly it would happen and I have to undo steps. And just now it just doesn't work that way anymore. It doesn't make a big mess. So if you haven't been over to my website to get the new graph paper, go over there. You might have to just do a search in Google, go AKAAWOL.com, and then put a space and just put in graph paper, and it'll turn up that way. Because when I need it, like when I want to make something, that's how I do it. That's how I bring it down. Oh, did you see? So like the yellow was going through there, right? I'm doing up the stuff that's going underneath, and it just shows exactly where that's going to go at the very end. So I now know which way to sequence the strings when I'm starting the bracelet. So now I'm going to go with the greens. And normally I think I would do one side at a time, but I kind of figured out while doing this, doing them both means that if you figure out what you did on the one side, you can do the other side just a little bit quicker. You don't have to rethink the whole thing through, which definitely made the whole thing just a whole lot easier. So that one's really more or less up to you how you want to do it. And you can see when all of the other stuff is in play, you can see like that orange has to come through there. That's just, it's going to be the next thing on the inside, right? So it's going to fill up that square, make the corners, and you can follow it along. When it gets to that yellow, it has to turn the other direction because the yellow's directions were already determined. So it should become very intuitive. And the fact that the oranges cross over each other means that if towards the end of the bracelet or whatever, if the string you were using a lot is now getting too short to use, you can swap it with the other one, which is great. I mean, there's nothing like getting most of the way through a project and suddenly realizing like, oh, this isn't going to work because my string is too short, and trying to add string is no fun, especially when it's a bracelet. Bags are a whole different thing. Adding strings to a bag is sort of part of the name of that game, unless they're the little ones. But yeah, for a bracelet, it should be a little bit easier. It should be fun. Whoop. See, again, I hit the little outer square and it didn't destroy everything. So yeah, that's awesome. And you can see exactly where that red's going to go and come out. Perfect, right? So much easier. Now, I'm going to cheat a little bit, and instead of doing both sides, I'm going to copy that top half because I know that I'm going to make it symmetrical, and I know that everything going to that middle line is already symmetrical. Copy it, paste it to a new layer, and then flip it over. I removed all the white so I can see better what's going on. So when I line it up, I get it lined up properly. And I can zoom in real close and get it to lay exactly right. And there you go. And then I will merge the layers down. And there you have it. So that saved a whole lot of time when it came to putting this thing together, getting it set. Lining it up is, you can see it's a little tricky, but that's a whole lot easier than filling out the whole thing like basically a second time. All right, now the little tool up here will let you pick out an individual color, right? So in this case, the orange. And I can take, say I'm using a dark blue, and the paint bucket filled the entire section, and I changed the orange for that dark blue. And then I'm going to go a shade lower. And what I'm doing here is I already know what I want to make. I already have the string cut for it, everything. And I don't necessarily do this all the time because I can kind of in my head figure out like what I'm supposed to do. But if I want to make things easier on myself, this is a method. Being able to select a color and change it up to something else. Like, I'm going to use the lightest blue, change that out for the red. And boom, I actually have the design now. And that's all there is to that. That's so much easier, right? And here's the bracelet. This is something I put together. Didn't take that too terribly long because the bracelet's relatively easy. Plus, I kind of knew what was going on because I actually made the pattern myself. So hopefully this inspires you, gives you an idea. Maybe you come up with your own way of making it more twisted or different or whatever. So I would like to thank all my Patreon supporters. You guys are what make this happen. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. If you want to come over to Patreon and help support the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. Every little bit helps, even if it's not a long-term commitment. So until next time, don't get your strings in a bunch.